We are pleased now to be joined by Pro Football Focus NFL Draft analyst Trevor Sikkema. He's also the co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Trevor, thanks for coming in with us. You're here with Steve and Carl. Appreciate you taking the time. Love some of the content you've been putting out. Some of it is kind of timely. I never think about this, and then when you did this article about coordinators, it's always a little bit timely because we got new head coaches in the league. Like the Detroit Lions lost both their coordinators this year, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, to different head coaching positions. The Bills have lost a coordinator in the recent past as Brian Daboll went to the New York Giants. It's a thing, right? So you put out a list of guys that maybe we should keep our eyes on getting head coaching jobs. Give us the gist of that.
Yeah, so I mean, Joe Brady's on that list, right? And he has to be as the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you look at it since he has taken over, really, as the interim, offensive coordinator and then full-time offensive coordinator, the Bills have been number one. They've had the number one EPA per pass in the NFL over the last year and a half, and they've had the number two EPA per rush. And anytime you have that type of success, of course, the teams in the NFL are going to want a piece of that. And so, I think what's working for Joe Brady as well is, and I say this in the article, he's not unfamiliar to this spotlight, right? You go all the way back to 2019. He was the pass game coordinator for LSU. He wasn't even the play caller and the offensive coordinator, and yet he was talked about as sort of this next hotshot NFL offensive coordinator that was going to become an NFL head coach. And obviously with him getting his first in as an offensive coordinator with Matt Rule in Carolina, it felt like we jumped the shark a little bit early there, but I feel like he could be ready now, especially if it's another year where things are going great. And of course, Josh Allen is all-world talented. There's no doubt about that. But anytime you have this level of success on the offensive side of the ball, and specifically with a talented quarterback, like I said, other teams are going to want to get in on the mix of that, because a lot of these teams that are going to be hiring head coaches, there's a chance that they've either got young quarterbacks or just they're about to be drafting quarterbacks. And so they're going to want somebody who knows what it's like to have that sort of relationship where you have that success with a really important position. So Brady is one of those guys that it feels like we've talked about him a handful of times throughout the last 5 or 6 years. But man, if the Bills have the year that we think that they're going to have, those discussions and his name is going to be at the top of the list when it comes to head coaching candidates.
I'm sure Bills fans are ecstatic that you're talking about their offensive coordinator in this light, but a little bitter as well that when you speak of him this way, that means he's probably going to leave soon. But do you think it's a foregone conclusion, let's say, if they're top 5 again in EPA per play, that he is gone? Because looking at Ben Johnson, he stayed a third year in Detroit and tried to find his best case scenario that ended up being Caleb Williams in Chicago. For Bills fans out there, if the Bills are successful again, do you think it's foregone conclusion Joe Brady's gone?
I don't think it's a guarantee. And you brought up the right example, right? You brought up Ben Johnson, who over the last 2 to 3 seasons has had the opportunity to be a head coach elsewhere. And I think that we've often operated under the thought process that if you're a coordinator and you get a head coaching gig, that you're just going to leave. Like, that's what's going to happen. But we have seen before that that's now not a guarantee. And if the situation is not right, not only are there, I think that we go back to the way that they say it, where it's like, oh, there's only 32 of these jobs in the world, 32 head coaching jobs in the National Football League. And so when you have the opportunity to get one, you got to jump on it. But if it's to a situation that's not ideal, or one that you really think could be such an uphill climb that it might be, it might be Mount Everest, it might be too much to overcome, then all of a sudden, all you're really doing is you're putting yourself in a bad situation to have a bad record as a head coach and not get that second contract as a head coach and obviously be able to stick around the league. So I think Ben Johnson kind of gave you a little bit of a blueprint of, yeah, okay, it's more likely than not they do leave, but it's not a 100% slam dunk guarantee.
There are others as well. Joe Brady's not the only offensive coordinator out there that's turning heads. What are some others that Bills fans might know or have some interest in? And there's other. I mean, this question goes on and on. Like, what happens to the Detroit Lions this year with 2 new coordinators? Right? I mean, do they continue to win games? But as for the coordinators on the radar now, what are some of the names that Bills fans might recognize or maybe not recognize?
Yeah, some other guys that I think are going to be up there with Joe Brady if they have successful years for head coaching gigs on the offensive side of the ball. I wrote in this article, Cliff Kingsbury's got to be one of them, right? He's somebody who, again, sort of like Joe Brady, the last 5 or 6 years, we've talked about him as a potential head coach. Obviously, he was a head coach when he was with the Arizona Cardinals, but even before then, long before then, and even after his time with the Cardinals, people have been saying like, hey, is he going to make the jump? Is he going to be a head coach? Even with 1 year of success with Jaden Daniels last year, it was like, hey, is Cliff going to take the jump to be a head coach again? And I think that that's probably coming, but I think that Cliff Kingsbury is looking at that similarly to sort of the conversation that we just had, where he's not just going to take any head coaching opening. It's got to be the right one. I think another one is Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly's been a two-time head coach in this league, first with the Philadelphia Eagles and then with the San Francisco 49ers. And he went to UCLA after that and had a couple of years at UCLA where I thought they were fine, but it clearly was not enough to get him those job opportunities that he wanted to get back in the league. So last year, he ended up leaving UCLA, going to Ohio State to not even be their head coach, but be their offensive coordinator. So taking a step down, if you will. But obviously being a national championship offensive coordinator comes with its perks too. And now he's back in the league as the offensive coordinators for the Las Vegas Raiders. And so if he has another good year there, I think that just his resume is going to be too much. You're going to get these teams that really want to perform well on that side of the ball. And so I would say those are two guys in the league right now that, in a long-term look, when you're looking more towards next offseason, I can predict those guys, if they have great seasons again, they're going to be in the head coaching conversations.
You do a lot of fantastic work over at Pro Football Focus, especially in the draft community. The Bills' theme of their draft this year, big people, especially big people that play on the defensive side of the ball. Was there a pick in particular that you were really excited to see and how they progress into their career in the National Football League?
Honestly, I'm a big Landon Jackson guy. Like, I really do love Landon Jackson. I feel as though he is the same archetype as sort of what they drafted with AJ Epinesa. And I think AJ Epinesa has been fine for them, but I think maybe they would have wanted the ceiling to be a little bit higher, see a little bit more production. I feel as though that could be the case with a Landon Jackson, who I've really liked watching how he developed first as a really good run defender, and now he is blossoming into a good pass rusher as well. He brings you great length, great size. He can play everything from basically a 7 technique stand-up outside linebacker, and of course you can reduce him inside to a 5 technique and a 4-eye technique type of a player, whether you want to be an even or an odd front. So I think that I really like that Landon Jackson pick. Obviously, the one that people talk about a ton is Deone Walker, right? If Deone Walker kind of pans out for them, what a steal that would be, getting him in day 3 in the 4th round. And so they say, of course, you can't teach that size and what he brings to the table in that regard. If he is able to blossom and sort of be that versatile interior defender where he can play that 3-4 defensive end spot for you, he can play as a nose tackle for you. It's just a matter of him. For me, it was always a matter of, I felt like he wasn't really playing in shape. And I don't know, this might not be all him. You know what? Sometimes Kentucky's like, hey, we want you to be a little bit heavier. We want you to be able to play this position. And you can see guys get to the NFL, and sometimes these NFL strength and conditioning coaches and nutritionists and everything say, whoa, okay, no. You've been carrying a little bit too much weight. Let's hone in on that the right way. Let's get you to a really healthy weight. And that's what I hope we can see from Deone Walker, because not only will that help him be healthy, which we learned after the draft that he was kind of struggling with a back injury throughout all of last year, but it'll allow him to play at an optimal level when it comes to that strength and speed. So I think those two guys along the defensive line are the ones that I'm looking at.
Who do you think, as we head into training camp, who do you think the Bills' best defensive player is?
Wow. I think it probably, off the top of my head, I would probably say it's Greg Rousseau, right? I love what Rousseau is able to bring to the table. This is somebody who, when I was scouting him at Miami, I was just blown away by what he was able to do as a nose tackle, as a 3 technique, as a 5 technique. I mean, he was just able to do so many different things, and it feels as though the Bills give him that freedom to be able to do that week in and week out, and he's such a chess piece for their defensive line. Obviously, Matt Milano, when he is healthy, he is fantastic. Christian Benford has been excellent for them as well. But man, it's that versatility of what Greg Rousseau brings to that defensive line that I love so much about what they can do and how flexible they can be every single week.
Is there a player on the defensive side of the ball that you want to see take a leap into that next tier, that top 10, top 15 at their position that would help propel the defense going forward?
Sure. I mean, if you have a player like Ed Oliver's the first one that comes to my mind, to be honest with you, because, he is somebody who, when I was scouting him at a Houston, it's like, man, this guy has just such unique quickness. He's such a mismatch in that regard. He's a little bit smaller, but that comes with a leverage advantage for how strong he is as well. I feel like Ed Oliver has been solid, and there are times when he has been really good in giving you some impactful play, but he hasn't taken that leap into being that consistent, disruptive, one of the guys that we talk about often when we're talking about some of the best defensive tackles in the league. I feel as though they're really trying to put together a defensive line that allows guys like Oliver to get a lot of one-on-one situations where he can really thrive. And so I would love to see him sort of take that next step, be more of that speed rusher, utilize a lot of the physical gifts that he has. And so Ed Oliver's probably the first one that comes to my mind that I'd love to see him take a leap this year.
One of the topics that we've had as Bills fans in this radio station is James Cook this offseason, mostly because of his contract. And I'm not going to get into the economics of it. I'm just going to ask you, where does he rank in the hierarchy of running backs in the National Football League? How good is he? What is his top end? What is the perception of him outside of the Bills locker room?
If I remember correctly, I believe that we had him as a top 20 back. I can't remember exactly where he came in on our running back rankings this offseason, but he is somebody who the best part about him is he gives you that game-breaking high ceiling ability, right? Like sometimes you'll watch James Cook and sometimes it's not always like, hey, okay, he'll always give you the 4 or 5 yards per carry. Sometimes it'll be a little bit less, but he will give you those home run hitting spots. And so when you have a deep running back rotation like the Bills have, you want to have a player who could be a feature and dynamic player for you. And so there are other backs in the league that I think, maybe they'll deal with contact a little bit better. Maybe they have those yards after contact or just yards per attempt averages. They're a little bit better. Maybe their floor is a little bit higher every single time they touch the ball. But what I loved a lot about James Cook coming out of Georgia is I liked him first and foremost as a receiver, what he could be as a receiver out of the backfield, how sharp his routes were when matched up against the linebackers. I still think that exists for his game. And for running backs, you talk about the economics part of it. You have to bring value in the passing game. You have to. That is how you get that second contract, that you get teams to stick around with you. Not only are you great when you put the ball in your gut and you're able to, take it deep and have those home run balls and showcase great athletic ability, you have to be a plus in the pass game as well. And it feels like James Cook is and can be that for you. And so that's a big part of that offense as well. And so, again, I can't remember exactly where he ranked on our running back rankings, but he is one of the more dynamic backs in the NFL. And it certainly doesn't hurt when you rush behind an offensive line that we had ranked third ranked offensive line in the NFL for just how good and how great the chemistry is with the Buffalo Bills offensive line. That not only goes for when Josh Allen has the football, but of course, when a guy like James Cook has it as well.
You had him ranked 12th in your ranking, so clearly an above-average back
There we go.
In the National Football League. I do want to pivot to the receivers on the outside. You had them ranked 19th. Now they've made some changes, bringing in a Josh Palmer. They also added Elijah Moore later in the offseason. The offensive line's ranked 3rd. James Cook's ranked 12th. I presume Josh Allen is no lower than 2 or 3.
Sure.
Are there any concerns with the wide receivers heading into the season? Do you think they've done enough to keep the offense at this elite level?
So I think that they've done enough with one caveat. Keon Coleman has to take the step. Like, in my opinion, if Keon Coleman becomes your wide receiver 1, everything's going to look great in Buffalo. If he is your wide receiver 1, if he is your on the line of scrimmage X caliber type of guy who can beat press coverage and win in the red zone, and he could just be that 1,000-yard wide receiver 1 for you, then all of a sudden, Khalil Shakir being a high volume, short yardage guy, you love that. Josh Palmer could be a deep threat for you. You have the tight ends as well. And I mentioned some of the running backs, including obviously James Cook coming out of the backfield. It all looks so much better if Keon Coleman is that wide receiver 1. Now, when you look at how they played last year, and it was Coleman's rookie season, but there wasn't a single wide receiver outside of Khalil Shakir that had a receiving grade for the year above a 70. So Khalil Shakir was the only one. I believe it was around an 80.7, if I remember off the top of my head correctly. So you feel great about what you have with Shakir, but you need that player who puts fear in the eyes and the hearts of the defense, especially those secondary players. Coleman has that ability to do that. So even though would I say that it's the best wide receiver room in the NFL? No. I think that it is exactly what the Buffalo Bills would need to give themselves a legitimate chance to get to and win a Super Bowl if Coleman can be the guy who could take that next step. So that would be my answer to that.
You obviously scouted Coleman coming out of the draft. I guess what type of player do you think he projects to be at his ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, he has that wide receiver 1 type of ceiling. Really explosive athlete, great jump ball wide receiver, and absolute alpha at the catch point. And this is what you want. These are things that you want from a X type of wide receiver. So who knows how to win on the line of scrimmage with good releases, with strength, who can get off of press coverage, somebody who could win in the red zone when space is at a premium, if you will. The question with Coleman and what worried me about him, why he wasn't my wide receiver one that year, was because as much as I loved a lot of what he was athletically, he didn't translate that athletic ability into separation scores. A lot of his production and what we saw when he was at Florida State and even at Michigan State was winning in contested catch, close coverage situations. Now, you ooh and ah when you're able to go above the rim and absolutely moss somebody, and those are big-time highlight plays. But it sure is a lot easier when you can create a consistent window of separation for your quarterback to be able to hit that's a little bit easier. That's the next step for Coleman. That is what holds the key to him being that wide receiver one type of player that the Bills would need for this wide receiver room. So that's sort of what my scouting report was of him when he was coming out of Florida State and what I'd love to see from him in his second year this year.
And now that we've honed down on the roster, let's step back and take a look at the big picture. Look at the Bills' schedule. They're playing the NFC South, the AFC North, and, of course, the AFC East. You ranked the divisions, and you had the AFC East as the 7th-ranked division in the NFL, which is next to the bottom. I kind of, outside of the Bills, I kind of might have to agree with you. But how's it look for the Bills and plowing through the NFC South, the AFC North, the AFC East, and playing a first-place schedule? This is we've talked about it a lot, obviously, Trevor. The season and the schedule kind of lay out very nicely for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do, especially looking at it right now. I haven't had the chance to really look at it, and I see it on the screen there. I mean, you get the Chiefs not only after the bye, but okay, you play the Panthers after that. I think the Panthers are going to be better this year, but then you get the Chiefs and you get them at home. Obviously you get the Bengals at home as well. So those two teams and the Ravens at home, I see that as well. So you get the 3 toughest teams in that division that you have to play. You're getting all of them at home, and a lot of the away games are against teams that you feel like you're going to have a pretty good advantage against, and the division. Yeah, I mean, the division is one of the easier divisions, if there is such a thing in the NFL, that we have here. And it's been the Bills at the very top for the last 5-6 years, and it feels like it's going to be that again, depending on what you think of the New England Patriots and what you think of the Jets this season. I think those teams are going to be good, but are they really going to be extremely competitive when it comes to the win and loss column against the Buffalo Bills? I don't think so, especially when I look at this schedule the way that it is. I'm even just noticing right now they're playing the Eagles, and they're getting the Eagles at home. And so it's definitely a favorable schedule. It's a year where I think that a lot of those young guys and those new additions, you can realistically expect those guys to step up. And Matt Milano is a big deal for this team, right? If Matt Milano is fully healthy and he's giving you at least one more great year in him, I know he's getting a little bit older, but if he's got another fantastic Matt Milano-esque type of a season, I really do think that 1 seed is within range for them, and you can realistically predict them to be a Super Bowl caliber team, especially when you look at that schedule. I really do.
When you look around the division, Patriots, Dolphins, and the Jets, what do you make of what Miami did this offseason? Trading away Jalen Ramsey, bringing back Minkah Fitzpatrick, taking a defensive tackle at 13 overall, then trading up for a guard in the second round. They've done a lot of peculiar things this offseason. Mm-hmm. I want to hear from someone else that's outside of Western New York. What do you think of what they've done?
I don't love what Miami has done this offseason, and I think it starts to spell out a rebuild much more than it does a deep playoff run and really hitting the gas in this current winning window. I wonder if they look at their current situation and they just go, you know what, we tried, but the injury luck bit them bad, and it's just really unfortunate sort of what's happened with a couple of their great pass rushers. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa as well. The offensive line getting Teron Armstead and then him being hurt, and now he's not even there anymore. But it just feels as though a lot of the chips that they had in the pot, it did not go the way that they wanted it to. And I think there's a reason why these couple of moves that Miami has made over the last week or so, when it's involved draft picks, it's involved 2027 draft picks. And I think that there's a reason for that. And the reason why is because I went and I looked up a lot of the contract situations that they have on the team. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Ramsey, obviously, Tyreek Hill, and then if you go to Tua Tagovailoa as well, you can throw in Teron Armstead because they're paying him a little bit now that he's gone, but you get that off the books as well. All of those contracts And a lot of that guaranteed money and all of those, their highest paid contracts, is flexible and or off the books by 2027. And I wonder if Miami looks at this situation, and I wonder if they just go, we tried with this current regime, but I'm not so sure that unless they make a deep playoff run this year, unless they at least win that first wild card weekend matchup, which I would assume that if they're going to make it, they're going to make it as a wild card team, unless they win that matchup, and then maybe they've even got to win another one. I don't know if this current build of the Miami Dolphins is for the long haul. I think that instead this team is maybe 1 foot out the door a little bit and realizing that, hey, we might as well hit reset and maybe be able to time when the Buffalo Bills aren't at the very peak of the division. Maybe try to time a year where they take a little bit of a step back, because I just don't know if that's going to happen over the next couple of years, and Miami just doesn't feel like they're going in that direction.
The two other teams in the division, the New England Patriots and the New York Jets, both brand new head coaches, although Vrabel is a guy that came up from Tennessee and had a pretty good, what I thought was a pretty good run in Tennessee with the Titans. Aaron Glenn, really one of the hottest names in the coaching market, who's not been a head coach coming and in this year's hiring cycle. Which one of those guys do you like the situation better? Which one is set up for more success?
Well, I think that the Jets might be set up for more success this coming year, but they're going to be an interesting case study because, man, I think they're going to run the football a lot. I think you look at this offensive line, you obviously look at Breece Hall. It's a major year for him. It's a crucial year there. You sign Justin Fields, and Justin Fields, I think, is getting better as a passer, but he's, somebody who's able to give you a lot of threat with what he can do with his legs and sort of an RPO and a dual threat rushing offense. I just think that the Jets are going to run the ball a lot. They're going to control the clock a lot. They're going to try to win with their defense. And it's going to be a very Aaron Glenn style type of team, in my opinion. They're going to try to beat you up front in the trenches. And I think that, again, that will make for a competitive team. Will that make for a playoff team? I'm not so convinced there. I think the goal should more be sort of that 500 mark than anything else. For the Patriots, I think the goal is probably similar for them. You're hoping that Drake May really takes that next step up, but really you're just hoping the offensive side of the ball looks a lot better. They've got Josh McDaniels. Not only do they have Mike Vrabel, an experienced head coach, they've got Josh McDaniels back as that offensive coordinator. And so, with him being back there, somebody who's done it for such a long time, you hope that veteran voice is great for a young quarterback in Drake May. You hope the offensive line is night and day different than it was last year. It was the lowest graded offensive line that we had at PFF in 2024. You're hoping that the wide receiver room looks a lot better. I do think the defense is going to be much better with their free agency additions and their draft additions there in New England. And then certainly any Mike Vrabel team that we have seen coached over the last 5 or 6 years, that they play with sort of his mentality and his style, and that's a successful one. So I think that both of those teams are going to be good or competitive, I should say. But, when it comes to them taking the crown from the Bills, I don't quite see that.
What do you make of Drake May if everything works out for him around him?
I love Drake May. Drake May was my QB2 behind Caleb Williams in the class 2 years ago. I think he's supremely talented. In his 2 years that he started with North Carolina, he had elite passing grades. He had some of the most big-time throws in all of college football. I believe there was no quarterback who had more big-time throws in that 2-year sample size of what May was when he was just a true sophomore and a true junior. And so he's a younger prospect. He's a gunslinger type of a player. You knew that probably his first year as a starter, whenever that was going to come, whether it was a rookie or his sophomore year, whatever that looked like, it was going to come with its ups and downs, and it definitely has. But I think that a positive for Drake May is that he showcased a lot of athleticism. You guys see there on the screen what he was as a rusher. He had an above 80 rushing grade last season as a quarterback, and I think that when things weren't working well for him, when the protection wasn't holding up, when he didn't have the wide receivers to throw to, he was able to take off, and he was able to show you he's got a little bit of scoot to him too. He's a good enough athlete to keep the defenses honest. Anytime you play man coverage and you got your back to the quarterback, he can sometimes make you pay because of that. So I think he's a very high ceiling type of a quarterback, absolutely a franchise caliber guy. And now we've got a much better and more stable situation for him to work around. And so again, maybe it's not playoffs for them this year, but I think the playoffs are coming at some point with Drake May in New England.
Pro Football Focus NFL draft analyst, also co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, Trevor Sikkema. Thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.